These are the cases where people vanished into the wild and stayed there far longer than anyone thought possible. Long enough that official searches were called off. Long enough that families were told to prepare for the worst. And long enough that survival itself stopped being about rescue and became about pure endurance. What makes these stories unsettling is not just how long these people survived, it is how close they came to disappearing forever. These are 10 real cases where people survived alone in the wild far longer than anyone expected. In 1994, Prosperi was competing in a multi-day ultra-marathon across the Sahara Desert. Runners carry their own supplies and checkpoints are spread across brutal terrain. During one stage, a massive sandstorm rolled in with winds so strong it erased tracks almost instantly. Prosperi took shelter behind a dune. When the storm finally passed, he stood up and discovered something terrifying. The race markers were gone. The other runners were gone, and the landscape around him looked identical in every direction. He tried to walk back toward where he thought the course had been, but the Sahara does not forgive mistakes. After hours of walking, he realized he was moving deeper into the desert. Temperatures during the day exceeded 120 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, they dropped sharply. Prosperi had no reliable water source and limited food. He began rationing immediately. Within days, dehydration set in, his lips cracked, his tongue swelled, his urine stopped completely. On the 5th day, Prosperi came across an abandoned shrine. Inside were bats. With no other option, he captured them, killed them, and drank their blood to survive. Later, in a moment of despair, Prosperi attempted to end things for himself, but the desert heat cauterized the wounds before he could bleed out. When he regained consciousness, he took it as a sign that he had to keep going. He continued walking for days. He survived on insects, lizards, and condensation scraped from rocks at dawn. On the 9th day, he stumbled into a military outpost. Search teams had already assumed he was dead, and Prosperi lost over 30 pounds in 9 days. He suffered permanent kidney damage, but he walked out of the desert alive. Salvador Alvarenga went fishing for one day. He did not return for over a year. In November 2012, Alvarenga left the coast of Mexico in a small fiberglass boat with one other fisherman. A violent storm hit shortly after they set out, the boat's engine failed, the radio stopped working, and they drifted into the open Pacific Ocean. For weeks, they survived by catching fish with their bare hands and drinking rainwater. Alvarenga taught his crewmate how to eat raw fish and sea turtles, but his partner grew sick and eventually refused food. After 4 months, the other fisherman died. Alvarenga pushed the body into the sea. Now completely alone, he continued drifting. He survived on raw fish, turtles, birds, and sharks caught by hand. He drank rainwater collected in containers and turtle shells. When rain did not come, he drank turtle blood. Months passed. His skin hardened, his hair bleached white, his mind began slipping. He talked to himself constantly to stay sane. After 438 days, his boat washed ashore on a remote island in the Marshall Islands, over 6,700 miles from where he started. Villagers found him barely able to walk. Many people doubted his story until ocean drift patterns confirmed it was possible. Doctors said it was one of the longest confirmed survival cases at sea in human history. Yossi Ghinsberg was 22 years old when he decided to explore the Bolivian Amazon. In 1981, Ghinsberg and 3 companions set out into the rainforest. The group split after disagreements about the route. Ghinsberg and one other man attempted to follow a river downstream on a handmade raft. The raft broke apart in rapids, and Ghinsberg was thrown into the jungle alone. He had no map, no food, no survival gear. For nearly 3 weeks, he wandered through one of the most hostile environments on Earth. He survived by eating wild fruits and roots. Many of those made him violently ill. He was constantly infected by insects. His feet rotted from standing water. Maggots infested opened wounds. At one point, he followed a jaguar through the forest, hoping it would lead to water. He hallucinated regularly. He lost track of time. He nearly drowned multiple times while crossing rivers, and after 19 days, he collapsed near a riverbank. By pure chance, the friend he had separated from earlier was searching upstream by canoe. He spotted Ghinsberg barely conscious in the mud. Doctors said he was within days of death. Ghinsberg later wrote a book about the experience. His story is now considered one of the most detailed first-hand survival accounts ever recorded. Ada Blackjack was never meant to be an explorer. In 1921, she joined an Arctic expedition as a seamstress. She was the only woman among 4 men attempting to colonize Wrangel Island north of Siberia. The mission went wrong almost immediately. Supply ships failed to arrive, food ran low, the men grew sick from scurvy. One by one, they left the camp in a desperate attempt to seek help, and none returned. Ada was left alone with a cat. She had minimal survival training. Temperatures dropped below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Polar bears roamed nearby. Ada learned to hunt seals using the rifles left behind. She patched her own clothing. She built fires and maintained shelter alone for 2 years. When a rescue ship finally arrived in 1923, they expected to recover bodies, but instead they found Ada alive. She had survived longer than any of the men. Her story was initially downplayed, but today Ada Blackjack is recognized as one of the most remarkable survival stories in Arctic history. Juliane Koepcke was in a plane when it was struck by lightning. On Christmas Eve 1971, her flight broke apart midair over the Peruvian rainforest. She fell over 10,000 feet, still strapped to her seat. She survived the fall, and when she regained consciousness, she had a broken collarbone, deep cuts, and a concussion. She was alone in dense jungle with no supplies. Drawing on survival knowledge taught by her parents, who were biologists, she followed a small stream downhill, knowing it would eventually lead to civilization. For 11 days, she walked through flooded forest. She ate candy she found in the wreckage. Insects burrowed into her wounds. Maggots formed but actually helped prevent infection. She eventually found an abandoned hut near a river, and when loggers arrived days later, they carried her to safety. She was the sole survivor of the crash. Ricky Megee vanished in 2006 after his car broke down in Western Australia. With little water and no clear direction, he walked into the bush hoping to find help. He quickly became disoriented, and for 71 days he survived by living in caves. He collected rainwater in tarps. He ate insects, frogs, and plants. He lost massive weight and suffered from dehydration and sun exposure, and search teams eventually stopped looking for him. When a group of cattle station workers discovered him by chance, he was barely recognizable. Doctors said survival beyond a few weeks in that environment was extremely rare. In 1982, sailor Steve Callahan's boat sank in the Atlantic Ocean after hitting a whale. He escaped onto a 6-foot inflatable life raft with minimal supplies, and for 76 days Callahan drifted alone. He caught fish using improvised gear. He used solar stills to collect drinking water. He endured storms, sharks, and extreme isolation. He nearly died multiple times from dehydration. When he finally drifted close to the Caribbean, fishermen spotted him by chance. Callahan later documented his experience in detail. His survival techniques are now studied in maritime training programs. Beck Weathers was part of a 1996 Everest expedition that turned deadly. Caught in a blizzard near the summit, Weathers collapsed from hypothermia and snow blindness. Other climbers assumed he was dead and continued descending. Against all odds, Weathers regained consciousness overnight in sub-zero temperatures. He stood up and began walking, severely frostbitten and nearly blind. He reached camp alive. Doctors later amputated both his hands and parts of his face, but he survived conditions that should have been fatal within hours. Hiroo Onoda was a Japanese intelligence officer stationed in the Philippines during World War II. When the war ended in 1945, he never believed it. For 29 years, he hid in the jungle. He survived on coconuts, bananas, stolen livestock, and rainwater. He avoided contact with locals and ignored leaflets announcing the war was over, believing that they were enemy propaganda. In 1974, his former commanding officer was brought to the island to formally relieve him of duty. Only then did he surrender. He had survived nearly 3 decades alone in the jungle by discipline and routine. Poon Lim was a steward aboard a British ship torpedoed in 1942. He escaped on a life raft with almost no supplies. Over 133 days, he survived by fishing, catching seabirds, and collecting rainwater. He fashioned hooks from nails and used shark liver oil to preserve food. He drifted thousands of miles before being rescued included by Brazilian fishermen. His survival methods later influenced improvements in naval life raft design. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlovsky, and I will see you again soon. Bye!